Hello everyone. In this video I thought I'd just talk about keeping our eyes fixed on Jesus when the Pharisees come out of the woodwork. Most of you probably noticed now that, Final Call 07 is the main target of a lot of men who've come out of the woodwork, trying to demonize them and all this kind of stuff. And I just want to talk to you about, how we should probably be reacting to a lot of that stuff, when it's done to us. First of all, Final Call 07 doesn't really need any defending. He's obeying his Lord and Savior, and his Lord and Savior will vindicate him. We don't need to worry about that. We can't do that. It's God who justifies. It's not us. And so, Final Call 07 can't even really justify himself. I can't justify myself. As Paul says, I don't even judge myself because there's only one righteous judge. One. And the object is we keep our head down and eyes fixed on Jesus and just keep doing what he says. And we can see that clearly, how that works, if we just kind of look at how it worked for Jesus, because we're supposed to be walking in his footsteps, walking as he walked, picking up our cross as he picked up his cross. And Jesus said, the same thing will happen to us as happened to him. The world hated me, it's going to hate you, and all that stuff. When Jesus first showed up after he was baptized at the Jordan, he's kind of like a curiosity. Nobody was on his case. But then he started to do things and say things that Pharisees didn't like. The religious leaders, the temple rulers. And as time went on, this really got on their nerves. And they didn't like this. They wanted all the attention for themselves. They didn't want anybody following Jesus. They wanted, they wanted everybody to follow them. That's what they had in mind. And these guys were shameless men. They were children of the devil, Jesus says, murderers and liars. And, they conspired to kill God's son. Just think about that. They were filthy men. They were a brood of vipers. And as time went on, they tried to plot up schemes where they could try to discredit Jesus so that nobody would follow Jesus and everybody would follow them. That's all they cared about. And none of that ever worked, because Jesus was always doing the will of his Father, obeying his Father. And the more they tried to do this, the worse it just got for them, because he obeyed his Father. And, this just kept going and going and escalating, at least in their eyes, to the point where they realized there's only one thing we can do with this guy. We got to kill him. We have to remove this guy from our environment, remove him from our sight, remove him from the equation, and then we won't have this problem anymore. And if you follow Jesus faithfully and obediently, that's what men are going to want to do. And, this hasn't been happening much for centuries, really, because people have been following church rather than following Jesus. And so you don't see this kind of thing happening. It happened to the early Christians. Stephen was an example. People are stoning this guy to death, and he's going, forgive them. And they're killing him. And that's a true follower of Jesus. And with the stoning of Stephen, a great persecution broke out against the Christians, and Paul was among the guys doing it, until Jesus appeared to him on the way to Damascus and called him. And then Paul put his head down. There was no looking back. No looking back. And then they were trying to kill Paul. Same guys trying to kill Paul. Just as the world hated me, it's going to hate you. So it hated Paul. And so they're trying to kill Paul, because they realize there's nothing else they can do with this guy, because everything they try doesn't work. Even when they put him in prison, it doesn't work. So they're always seeking to kill him, remove him from the equation. And they think that that's going to be a solution to the answer in the end. It wasn't. The seed of the gospel is the blood of the martyrs, the blood of the witnesses of Jesus Christ. That's a true saying. So a lot of these guys out there now are, up to telling outright lies. In their demonization program, they're up to telling lies. Outright lies. Like, Final Call 07 wants to bring people under the law when he actually tells people, no, don't follow the law. If you're under the law, you're under a curse. They don't care. They'll twist it around to Final Call wants people under the law, because that's what they want to see. And so they're up to making outright lies now. Total lies. If you just compare what Final Call is saying, what these guys are saying, you'll see it all over the place. One lie after another. And they're trying to cultically manipulate people. And you know how they do that? By using the word cult. That word is a word you can use to manipulate people. And how do most people define a cult? Well, it's got someone in there who is trying to manipulate people. So if you're using the word cult to manipulate people, well, you might want to think maybe you are one. Because that's what that word is about, at least in today's mindset. So there's a demonization program now. Just like they tried to demonize Jesus. You are a Samaritan and you have a demon. All this kind of stuff. But none of that ever worked. Ever. And, Jesus didn't even need to go around justifying himself to these guys. Not at all. He just kept doing the Father's will. And that's how we need to see it. Don't worry about these guys. What these guys are doing is going to end up as nothing. Nothing. It's not going to work for them any better than it worked for the Pharisees. It's just not going to work. Just have to keep your head down, your eyes fixed on Jesus, and obey him. Really obey him. And be led by the Spirit of God to do Jesus' will. Jesus said, just as the Father sent me, I send you. Just as. And so we walk in his footsteps, and we do things just the way he did them. He didn't go around looking for a debate. They came looking for him. And when they came looking for him, the answer was short and quick, and he kept going. And he just kept going. He didn't have time for that stuff. He was too busy doing the will of his Father. And that's what we need to do now. We need to obey Jesus, the Father's word of truth, and keep our head down and just keep doing that. And you don't have to worry about any of these guys at all. What these guys are doing is just going to turn to rubbish. And that's basically what happened to the Pharisees. Look at the temple in AD 70. Boom. Destroyed. And, they basically destroyed themselves. And that's really what Jesus is talking about in Matthew 24, when he's connecting himself to the temple. Because he is the temple of God. Wherever the Spirit of God dwells is the temple of God. That's true of the disciples too. And so when they killed him, they just did it to themselves. Same old story. People like this end up hanging themselves. And by killing Jesus, they destroyed Judaism and their own way of life. Have you ever seen that Ouroboros thing? You might want to look it up. It shows a serpent consuming his own tail. He's consuming himself. That's what these guys were doing. And, they were children of the devil, and that's why that happens. They end up just consuming themselves, hanging themselves, and, it never works out for them. But if you obey Jesus, everything works out. Through him, we are more than conquerors. More than conquerors. And great things are going to happen, because there are many now who are, God is raising up to follow his Son. And there's going to be remarkable things happening in the years, the immediate years to come. And it's all through the power of God. It is God who works in the disciples of Jesus. They're nothing in of themselves. It's God who's doing it all. God bless you.